What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Albi Afterhours podcast. My name is Alex Duta. Super grateful to be your host today. With me, we have another fellow restoration entrepreneur who's gone from being down in the trenches to now pouring back within the restoration industry. Nate Cisney is joining us today. He's with Restoration Made Simple. They are a consulting firm for the fire and water restoration industry. And prior to that, he actually was a restorer, just like you and I. I'm super excited to dive into some topics today. Welcome to the show, Nate. How are you today?
I am awesome. Glad to be on the show. I've watched some of your other podcasts. They're excellent. So, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming. We're pretty selective in finding people, and we're very excited when we find people that kind of align with our mission here to bring them on our podcast. So I'd like to start, if we can. Everybody's got a story, and stories motivate me. They make me a better person, and I'd love for you to kind of share your story with me and maybe our audience, because I'm pretty sure there's somebody out there, and actually we could try this out. Comment below if you're out there and you relate to something from Nate's story, because I'm pretty sure somebody else probably is in what shoes you were about 5-6 years ago, and maybe they can kind of relate to you based off of that.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So I'm glad you said there's always a story. So anytime I teach, I always start with a story. I'm a huge believer in that. So thank you. My story is, maybe it's similar, but I would dare to say not so much. I actually came from the tech industry with startup companies, and that was 17 years ago. I came from the education sector. I do love education. I'm passionate about it, and I'd helped start up a software development school. There was only 8 of us. And then from there, another university was starting up an online program, and they'd asked me to go start their online program. So all this was startup stuff. And then out of nowhere, my brother and his partner, they owned a ChemDry, the largest carpet cleaning franchise in the nation. And they said, hey, we want to start a disaster cleanup company. We know you like sales. We know you're good at startups. Will you come do it? Was not in my space. I knew nothing about the industry whatsoever, but I knew that I liked to get big deals, and I liked to work through contracts, and see if I can bring pieces together. So at that time I was married. I didn't have any children, and I figured, what the heck, take the risk. So it was a huge risk, because little did I know what their finances were not in order. I think there was multiple days where they were close to going out of business. I knew nothing about the industry, but I knew from the very get-go that it was all insurance based. So I just told them, I says, hey, I'm going to go get all the biggest insurance contracts, and we'll get on the vendor program. Now, anybody that's listening, if they know anything about this, number one, we were not a franchise. Number two, we had not been in business more than a couple of months. So to go say you're going to get on the vendor program, that just does not happen. And I didn't know that, but I said, I'm going to go get on State Farms, because there was the biggest. And long story short, it took me 2 years to get on their program, and the only reason we got on that program is because they were only allowing national accounts to be on the mitigation program, so ServPro, Service Master. And I kept working with the vendor manager, and I finally realized, after he told me no, I don't know how many times, I asked him the question. I says, hey, do you have any problems getting mitigation companies to go up to Wyoming? Now, nobody wants to go to Wyoming, right? But one of our offices is only about an hour and a half away. And he said, nobody will go to Wyoming. We have a huge problem there. And I said, well, what if we will go serve Wyoming? Would you put us on your program? He calls me back a couple of weeks later, and he says, Nate, we're going to put you on for Wyoming, but we're also going to put you on for all of the state of Utah as well. And that was probably the biggest tipping point of our company, because literally from that moment forward, and this was kind of back in the good old days, it just solidified everything that we had as far as jobs coming through, and things just grew really, really quickly. So I guess moral of the story is, don't ever let no be no, and think outside the box, right? You always have to be thinking outside the box if you're going to try to bring stuff together. So 17 years of doing it. We were a multi-million-dollar company. We were doing a couple thousand jobs a year. I had a partner. We had 3 different offices that we were running, and we learned a lot. We had different mentors and consultants that we worked with. And then about 2 years ago, I had sold out my equity in the company back to my partner so that I could go into the consulting space. So now our primary focus really is startup to medium-sized companies, and that's who we help the most, just because they need more help than anybody else. And I like seeing results because typically with your smaller companies, you can get the turn time to go a little bit faster, whereas the really big companies, it takes much, much longer. And they're super smart and super good at what they do. And so we like helping the small guys out. So that's really what our focus is, and that's what we do.
That's super cool. So you basically went from startup tech to startup restoration, which is kind of the opposite of what I did, but that's actually pretty cool. I wanted to double click on something though. So I know you
Yeah.
said, you told me the story with the Wyoming and the State Farm program. And I know you said, obviously, yeah, the moral of the story there is, don't take no for an answer. Could totally relate to that. I pitched 100 different venture-backed or venture funds on the idea of Albi, and then 100 of them said no, and it only took one to say yes.
Yep.
But the other thing that I want to double click on is I think what changed in your approach, what was outside of the box, was what's in it for them. So you were knocking on State Farm's door trying to get on the program work, and you were probably mostly about you. I want to get on to
Yeah.
program work so I can get work. And the minute
Yeah.
you said, hey, I identify a problem that you may have, and the problem is, Mr. State Farm vendor, you probably don't have contractors to go to Wyoming, and I'm the solution, everything turned around. And I think that's the fundamentals of sales and relationship-based sales and things like those that a lot of restorers don't understand. It's the WIFT. It's what's in it for them. What's in it for the prospect that you're going after. They're not in it for the box of donuts, right? But the minute you can find that problem and then you solve it for them, you'll probably get referrals for life. So sorry, I just wanted to hop on
No,
that
I think it's
real quick.
that's an excellent point because I think most people, and you read a lot of the sales books, people make decisions based upon pain, right? What are their pain points? What's causing them? And if you can help solve their pain, all of a sudden they want to listen to you. But when you're talking about you, they could care less because it's not going to help them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you couldn't have said it any better. What's their pain point? What's their problem? And if you can be a solution, they're probably going to talk to you.
Yeah. So let's get into like Restoration Made Simple again, startup consulting. What kind of specific consulting do you guys do? I mean, is it from A to Z? Is it a particular type of restoration startup? It sounds like you're dealing with maybe the smaller guys under a specific threshold. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, no, excellent question. So if you're to probably look at our current clients, we've worked with probably a couple hundred over the past, couple years. But if you're to say who is our common clients, probably some it's 0 to 5 million, right? Which is, as
Got
you
it.
know, because you own your company, that's a pretty large portion of who's out there in that
Yep.
space.
Yep.
We are A to Z. Now, that doesn't mean that we proclaim to know everything, nor do we want to. But we do know when you're helping a startup, you kind of have to be A to Z because they know nothing. So you have to know about estimating. You got to know about how to train the techs. You got to know how to train on the WRT and the IICRC stuff, job documentation, and they got to help them with Xactimate. So
Mm-hmm.
thank heavens, because I came from the startup world, I had to go through all that stuff from the mitigation to the rebuild. My partner Greg has gone through that. He owned an asbestos company as well as a disaster company. So yes, that is really what we're doing. Now, will we focus on the numbers? Will we focus on the P&Ls? Yes, we have to focus on numbers. But for a lot of these people, when you say I want to dive super deep into the numbers, some of them really are only getting 2 jobs a month, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
actually not so much about the number per se. It's about how do we get more jobs, and then how do we maximize the jobs we're getting, right? So if your average is 2 grand, how do we get up to 3 grand, or how do we get up to 4 grand? So I guess if that answers your question, yes, we are A to Z. I love sales, so that's something I'm passionate about, and I love teaching. So to me, I want to be able to teach. And I think the biggest thing, and we'll probably touch on this later, is there's just so many misconceptions about this industry when people get in about insurance being good, about being bad, about TPAs being good, bad software. And I think, the ultimate thing, if I can change it, you and I have talked about this offline a little bit, is trying to bring more of a cohesive unity to this industry and realizing that maybe not everything's bad. Maybe it's just how we perceive things, and then going, how do we turn it into something that can be good?
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be kind of my mission, as I think is yours, is how do we bring
Yep.
people together and make this thing better?
Absolutely. Interesting. So, the other question I would have for you is you went from tech, you went to restoration, now you're in restoration consulting. So a couple different industries. And when I was going through the journey from restoration to tech, I noticed it was like a complete shock, right? It was a completely new industry. Things were completely different. But if you were to start all over again in restoration, what do you wish you would have known, or what do you wish you would have done differently?
A lot, a lot of things. When you start out, you make lots of mistakes, but that's how you learn. So I
Yeah.
still think the biggest one, and this is nothing towards my industry or what I'm doing now, but I would have hired a mentor if I could have. Somebody who was already in the industry and somebody who had
Hmm.
been through and done it. We didn't. We totally bootstrapped everything, literally everything. And we lost so much money. We made so many mistakes. Now, we were lucky. Ultimately, we came out on top, right? And things
Hmm.
went really, really, really well for us. But I wish I could have had somebody that I could have leaned on more that had
Hmm.
been through the process. And I know you're big on this type of stuff too. It helps when you don't have to make stupid decisions because you can call somebody that can maybe walk you through it a little bit to help you see a different side that you just don't even know about because you've never been through it. So I think that would have been the single largest part of it. Um, the other thing that I would have done is I would have set up my systems and processes way better. We were just super busy all the time, but we were not organized. We weren't. It seems like the more work we did, the less our margins went down, the more busy we got. So
Hmm.
I couldn't stand the fact that we were growing, but we were shrinking at the same time, right? You're doing more work, but your margins are going down because you're just too busy to be efficient. So I think I would have set up my processes and procedures a lot better.
Got it. Makes sense. Interesting. Very interesting. The mentor thing I take to heart personally. Like I think 99% of your problems are who, not how problems, and I think when restorers try to like DIY themselves through problems versus finding the people that have already solved them, I think it's a waste of time. Like there's people in the industry that have solved restoration accounting right now. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's people
Yeah.
in the industry that have crushed it with plumber marketing and things like those. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's people who have built SOPs like you have, for example. Like, why should I build my own SOPs? Like, let me start with yours and like tweak them up a little
Yeah.
bit, right? Um,
Yeah.
but a lot of times, I don't know, like, why do you think, a lot of restorers seem hesitant about taking on a mentor? They seem hesitant about investing in their own education and things like those. Like, why do you think maybe that is? And, how can we combat that as an industry?
I think that's a great question in the fact that it's number one. I think as business owners, being entrepreneurial, we have a vision of what we want already. And so
Hmm.
we think that we know how to do it because we're entrepreneurial by spirit, right? And it's like, hey,
Hmm.
I've done this before, I'm going to do it again. So I think sometimes that gets in the way of it. The other thing is spending money to make money, especially for the new startups. I mean, their answer is always going to be, oh, I just don't have money. I don't have
Yep.
money. And to me, my answer is to anybody looking at getting into this space, don't come into this space unless you have money set aside, right? Because
Hmm.
the chances of failing are super high when you
Yep.
don't have much in the bank. It is going to take a while to build it, and you're going to have to float your cost, your expenses, your mentor. So if you don't have enough money to pay a mentor monthly to get into it, then I would probably tell you now may not be the right time to do it, honestly, because that means that you're living week to week. And it also means you probably can't make business decisions that are going to be good for you simply because you're so strapped on cash. It's going to severely limit any type of marketing, any type of lead generation, any type of software that you need to run the industry. You're so yeah, I guess to answer your question, make sure there's money. If you don't have money, that's why I see a lot of people don't do mentors, and then a lot of people would still just rather learn through trial and error, which if they were to add up the cost of what that cost them versus a mentor, I think you'll always find that the mentor is going to be cheaper
Mm-hmm.
than the costly mistakes that they made.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And then after, you're the mentee and you get to a certain level, then, paying it back to the industry by becoming the mentor, and kind of moving forward that way. And I can tell you, I don't know if you feel the same thing, but like, I do a little bit of coaching on the side, and it's one of the things in life that brings me the most joy. I mean, I'm sitting here running a venture-backed company with like a lot of crazy things, but it's like sitting down one-on-one with restorers, being able to give them the feedback that I see, and having gone through those things and seeing the light bulbs go off, seeing them go make impact back to their customers, their families and stuff like that. Like that is a lot of joy. I absolutely love it. I get a kick out of it. So
It's the best part, right? And then when you get to actually see the success and they tell you, hey, thanks a lot, I appreciate it. Like there's nothing
yeah.
better, right? And it's not for your ego. It's just more of a, hey, I'm glad that this actually worked for you and that you're now finding success from it. There's nothing better.
Exactly. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think when we were looking at people to bring on the podcast, or when we first met before the podcast thing, I remember there was an article that was floating around on the internet that sparked a little controversy. I think it was a CNR magazine, and I know, for example, we use Slack internally, and it was dinging off the charts in our internal sales team Slack. And then I know, a few other channel partners who built tech within the space, they were texting me, yo, what do you think of this? Yada, yada. So it sparked a lot of controversy. You like became famous over it. But for those of you that don't know the article, Nate, can you summarize the article that you wrote in CNR? And then do you mind if we dive into it a little bit?
Absolutely. It may give me a chance to tell my story and, save my face, right? So I think I guess a little background on that is when I got into the consulting side, which was a year ago, I knew that I was now going to have the opportunity to give back to the industry. And so some of my key objectives that I told my partners was, hey, I'd like to connect with some of the editorial stuff. I'd like to get with RIA. I'd like to get on these so that we can start making a change, right? And so that was something specifically that I wanted to work on. So first thing I did, I actually did reach out to Michelle because I'd gotten her emails and I knew that she was a big influencer, and just said, hey, if I can ever write articles or if I can help you, please let me know. And she says, no, I'd love it. We always need stuff. She let me choose the topic. And when we were talking about it, she just said, Nate, this is golden. I love it. Can we please do this? So it was the very first article I've ever written. Had I have known that it was going to cause it's so much stir, I'm like, wow, way to come into the industry, right, on that side of things. And so I told her, she said, run with it. She got it. She loved it. But long story short, the article, for those who haven't read it, was just talking about, is there a way that we can bring all of the great technologies that exist and try to bring them together, because right now it feels very discombobulated. And me being a prior owner of a company that was doing literally thousands of jobs each year, and I think any owner, and I would be curious what you say because you owned a company, I have not talked to an owner yet who still doesn't feel like the process of getting documentation has actually increased as far as the amount of time that it takes an estimator or a technician, whatever you want to call them, because they are having to document so much more now. And traditionally at my company, on average, my guys were using 3 to 4 different apps for every job that they went to. And I won't mention company names. All the apps are good, otherwise we wouldn't have been using them. So we chose them for a reason. But when you looked at it, and as I listened to my technicians and the complaints that they had, you got to realize who we're dealing with. They're technicians, right? And so they don't necessarily like to do documentation. They want to get in, suck up the water. They want to tear it out. They want to get the homeowner happy. And so we found that there was definitely a lot of time that was being, I don't want to use the term wasted because we needed that information and the insurance did, but we felt like that process was taking way too long. And we as owners were paying for it. Insurance wasn't paying for it. It was coming out of our bottom line because we have to pay our technicians to be on a job documenting for an hour to 2 hours. Whereas before, in the olden days, it's like, hey, pull out your scope sheet, put a checkbox, and do it.
Exactly.
Now, I'm not saying the scope sheet was a great idea because Yet again, the technicians didn't like filling out paperwork. But if they're not willing to fill out paperwork, if you give them 4 apps, they're probably not willing to fill out 4 apps either, because that's just the way their mindset is. And so the article was to go, hey, we've got awesome technology out there. Why does everybody keep trying to invent a new product that already exists, that's already really good? Can we not somehow bring those together and try to bring it under one roof so that we don't have to have 3 or 4 different technologies on every job that the guys are using? So that was long story short of the article.
Yeah.
So
No, and I could totally relate to that and agree with that. And if I were to like create 2 different buckets of restoration technology, we have like archaic, old school, and not to talk bad about Verisk or Exactware. I'm an Xactimate certified trainer. I push that hard, but like when we're talking about archaic, like we're integrating with Xactimate. I know their backend, like it's really archaic, right? Because you got this giant company that wasn't product focused. They had other interests. Technology was just kind of a bolt on. And there's a couple different other companies that are like that, right? And, frankly, they just can't. Even if they wanted to, they just can't. They're carrying so much technical debt and things like those. So let's just like put those aside and just say, hey, look, those specific technology companies that, came out in 07 or whatever, they're just past due. We're paying our subscriptions for what once was a Ferrari and now is whatever. Now we go into like the new marketplace, right? And when we look at the tech marketplace within restoration, you're right. There's so many innovators that have done an amazing job. Call it Matterport, for example, Company Cam, Encircle. And like those technologies were very needed and they solved specific pain points that existed in a fantastic way. But you're right. The thing that the restoration industry lacks is the ecosystem that ties it all back together, right? Yeah. And what I mean by that is you can have something be powered by Matterport, but you don't necessarily want to go to Matterport's separate, platform and add into your checklist an extra thing, right? You ideally want one spot where people go to and they work through there. I'll give you an example. Within Albi, our phone system, like we built a phone system within the app. It's an in-app phone experience, but it's powered by the technology of Twilio. So we didn't have to go and reinvent the phone system, right? We just built it within the in-app experience. So I totally relate with you, especially in a technologically lagged industry like restoration. We need an ecosystem. We need an ecosystem that could talk to many others. And, that's kind of like one of my personal missions that I'm super, passionate about. And I know like some of the vertical SaaS guys, they took your message the wrong way of like, oh, well, we're Matterport. There's nobody who could, and I'm not saying Matterport said this, but there's nobody who could possibly spend their time and resources to build another Matterport. I'm like, no, we don't need to build another Matterport. We don't need to build another Company Cam or another Encircle, right? We just need to bring those into an ecosystem and be powered by that. And obviously the money will eventually get to Matterport. It will eventually get to Company Cam for their slices and so on and so forth. And those are just kind of like the subcontractors at this big house that we're building, which, there needs to be somebody that comes in and says, hey, we're going to be the GC. So.
Yes. No, and I think just your last statement, that's really what I was trying to get at is the technologies, no slam on technology whatsoever. No. For those who took offense, I'm still kind of surprised that they did, honestly, because I kept saying the technology is amazing. It's great. I just want to bring that technology under, if possible, one roof, and I think to your point, you got to have the GC. If we look at, say, Salesforce, maybe some people don't like Salesforce, but you look at it, they are integrating other technologies into their platform, and the end user doesn't even know how many other software companies are built into Salesforce. They never even see it. It's just, oh, no, I use Salesforce. Well, guess what? Salesforce is probably one fraction of what they're using, and there's 90% of other companies that Salesforce has brought in for those special needs to make it so it works. And so I'm just going, hey, how do we bring that in and make it more cohesive? So for those who took offense, I apologize. It was not an offensive article in my mind. I guess I can understand a little bit what they're saying, but really it was, how do we bring great technology together? That really is what the article that's what I wanted to portray. And I guess I didn't do a great job for some people.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a need to apologize, right? For, you being you and you expressing what you're expressing. I mean, Whatever you say, it's going to be used against you and used pro you. And that's the magic of just messaging. You be yourself, you're genuine. Those who love your messaging will come onto your tribe, and those who don't, they'll just, not be on your tribe. So
yeah. And that's okay. I still believe what I said. And hey,
yeah.
we need people who have a firm conviction in what they're doing, and that's great, right? So
cool. I'll have the video editing team cut out the whole apology note.
Hey, I thought it was good.
Yeah. So cool, man. Well, the other kind of thing I wanted to touch base on is I think you guys in general have this summit/event that you guys put on and kind of try to bring the industry together. So I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more about that and kind of what you're doing and, maybe some dates and times and stuff like that.
You bet. No, well, and we're hoping that we get you guys out there as we've talked about. So we'd love to have you. But yes, in November, twice a year, we have our owners workshop. It's very, very catered, obviously, to our clients, but also for other clients that are maybe venturing out to go, hey, do I join a mentorship? Do I get with a consulting group? They're very, very hands-on, so they're quite a bit different than a lot of other maybe workshops that you hear about. But we traditionally try to have 3 or 4 vendors because we always want our clients hearing about new technology, understanding what's there, if they're taking advantage or not taking advantage. So we'll have that. And then a lot of it will have very specific trainings just about the industry, about new and upcoming things, because once you're an owner, you get so ingrained, you're not hearing about the stuff outside of it. And I think a lot of times we miss key critical things. And so I always try to make it a point of, hey, what are the new industry trends, things they should be looking for? AI is becoming a huge thing. It's a buzzword. Some guys are like, I don't want anything to do with it. It's stupid. It'll never change. And I'm like, well, no, maybe you do need to look at it. People that don't like TPAs, I'm like, well, maybe you need to look at this. So it really is what we would call more of an eye-opening session for the owners. But it's also a great time, when owners get together, they love to talk. They love to share their experiences, to talk about what works and what doesn't work. And so we have clients all across the U.S. So it's nice to bring people all across the board to come together because there are new ideas and new things that are shared. And typically our owners walk away going, yeah, here's my takeaways. Here's what I'm going to do. So it's going to be in November. We had our dates set, and then we just found out yesterday we may have to be going to a convention, which I will talk to you about a little bit offline. So I'm going to say November right now. It's going to be probably the first week of November, but details to follow. And we'll definitely send out an email that has all the flyer and stuff. And if you want it for your clients, obviously they're welcome to come.
Awesome.
Aramsco is always nice. There's an Aramsco in Salt Lake City. We work closely with them, so they always help sponsor a lot of stuff as well. But yeah, that's the details. And we have lots of other workshops on our website. So we've got a technician training one. We have workshops going on all the time. A lot of them are virtual for those who can't travel, and then some of them are in person as well. So,
got it. So the one thing that clicked with me too, we talked about mentors earlier, and now you talked about bringing a bunch of owners together to talk about various things and grow. There was actually a business study done on proximity. And they said that people that are in close proximity consistently with people that are high functioning people, right, grow and experience results by I think they measured it at 15%. So if you're around people that are also growing their restoration businesses, right, your chances of succeeding increase by 15%. And then that same study said that through close proximity, if you're by people that are low functioning people, low vibing people, you're actually degrading by 30%. So your chances diminish by 30%. And there's so many sayings around that too. You're the average of the top 5 people you hang out with and things like those. But, from personal experience, being the smallest guy in the room at an event like what you're talking about, where people are just pouring into you, is by far the best thing that you can do. Because I'm a firm believer that the business is going to grow to the constraints of that leader. Yeah. So if that, 250,000 or that startup restoration owner doesn't grow, there's no restoration company. He can have that $10 million dream all he wants, but if he doesn't grow and level up and surround himself with people that can actually bring him up, it's not happening. So
I think to your point, Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just saying I love what you do with the events and things. That's really cool.
Well, to your point, it's amazing. You get to hear this all the time of people in this industry who go, "Oh, I can't do that," or "I can't increase my job average," or "I can't do content," or "I can't do this." Like they say that, and then when they come and they hear somebody else, one of our other owners, get up and talk about how they're crushing it, it's nice that they get to actually see that it is possible, because I think we do put a lot of constraints on ourselves as far as what we're capable of, and we just
Yep.
say we can't do it. And then when you
Yep.
hear some big other guy going, "Hey, I'm knocking it out of the park," all of a sudden our whole paradigm and perception changes and goes, "Ah, okay, maybe I can do this." So I love that aspect, that it does open a lot of people's eyes to know that there is, if there's a will, there's a way. And if you can talk to somebody who made it happen, go talk to them. Let them be your mentor for that day to go, "How did you do this?" Right? Like, what made this possible? So I love that fact that you get to see people who are doing things that others thought were not possible.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I'm excited. Can't wait to hear the dates. So if
Yeah.
somebody wants to reach out to you or meet you, where can they
Yeah.
do that?
Yes. So my email is very simple. So it's just Nate at RMS Consulting Firm. So just, restoration made simple, but it's the acronym. So Nate at rmsconsultingfirm.com. They can call us directly. My number, I give it out to everybody. It's just 801-336-7916. And yeah, we'd love to chat with anybody if they have questions. We're, like I say, we're very open. We get in the weeds with our clients a lot. I mean, just yesterday or today, actually, we went through one of our owners. We go through all their stuff, all their trucks, make sure they're stocked properly. We just know if you show up to a job and you don't have what you need, you're not going to make money, right? So we're a
Yep.
very hands-on consulting group as far as, guys, you need to be doing these types of things or else the other stuff just doesn't matter. So that's what we like to do.
Got it. Awesome, man. Well, this was fun. Thanks for coming on the podcast, and I look forward to having you back sometime. And
No, awesome. My
we'll keep in
pleasure.
touch, man.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Like I say, it was great. I know what you guys are doing is great. I do, just the plug for you guys. I've got clients using Albi, and that was part of the reason I reached out to you. As you know, I think it was your brother or brother-in-law I talked to. But yeah, my clients love Albi, right? And so at that point, I was like, I really need to find out more about you guys. So I appreciate it, and I think what you guys are doing is awesome.
That's awesome, and we appreciate what you're doing because you help push our clients to implement the product better and make smarter business decisions, and it's just a mutually beneficial relationship, and I love that. So, those of you listening, if you guys can comment below the biggest takeaway, that is your fee for listening to the gold nuggets that Nate just dropped on this podcast, and feel free to hit that subscribe button too, so that way we can get this channel with more subscribers, so we can do even more cool stuff. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks, guys.